The 21st century was a time of massive change in human lives. Social networks, cybernetics, lunar colonies. But the biggest change might have been in how we use language. For hundreds of thousands of years, there were two main ways humans communicated with each other: speaking and signing. Sure, there was writing, Morse code, semaphore, but these weren't used on a day-to-day basis, only in specific situations. And these were all just ways of representing spoken language. They weren't separate languages on their own. All of this changed near the end of the 20th century, the start of the information age. Texting and the internet allowed people to communicate with others predominantly or exclusively through written language. The change in medium immediately altered language itself. Abbreviations, emoji, punctuation, and capitalization were used to express things that written language couldn't, like prosody or facial expressions. For the first half of the 21st century, there were only small differences between texting and speech, mostly abbreviations and specialized vocabulary. Texting began to actually diverge from spoken language in the 2090s. Neural interfaces allowed people to interact with computers just by thinking. Brain mods were used to accelerate human thought. People could think and communicate millions of times faster. It was impossible to use speech or sign at this speed simply because our tongues and hands couldn't move fast enough to keep up. Audio and video communication were replaced with plain text, which also had the advantage of taking up less bandwidth. These technologies were pretty old by this point. Versions of them had existed for 50 years, but the 2090s were the first time they were used by the public. And like all periods of history, the first group to use them was the one that's always first to exploit advancements in technology. MOBA games were the first to use this, but it quickly spread to all multiplayer games. Entire matches could be finished in milliseconds, and fast response times were crucial to a team's success. Communicating with peers became a matter of engineering language to be as efficient and minimal as possible. Non-Latin or special characters were rarely used. Most words were shortened to a few characters, syntax was radically changed, and many new abbreviations and discourse particles were added. This linguistic milieu was the ancestor of the language that would come to be known as txtn, purely text-based language used as a lingua franca for centuries to come. This video describes the standard variety of txtn used in the 2600s, which is the official language of the Terra Luna Federation of Allied States. As a text-only language, there isn't exactly a phonology per se, so I'll describe the character set and some morphology here instead. The vast majority of dialogue consists just of ASCII characters, that is, all of the characters used on English language keyboards. The only non-ASCII characters with regular usage are emoji, the number of which has grown considerably over the past 500 years. These are only used externally, as isolated utterances or, at a minimum, disconnected from the syntax of the rest of the sentence. They act a lot like idiophones in spoken languages. Punctuation and symbols were used identically to alphabetic characters. They could be words or parts of words. Capitalization, however, usually wasn't used to distinguish between words. There were a few minimal pairs distinguished only by capitalization, but capitalization acted more like a prosodic feature, used to indicate focus. Another prosodic feature commonly used is repeating characters. This can be done with any character in a word, but is typically the last or sometimes the first one in a word. Repetition marks plurals in nouns, intensity in adjectives or emoji, and speed, force, or extent of an action in verbs. The number of repetitions used here matters. Doubling a character has a meaning of a little bit more, or a few. Tripling a character means a neutral more, many, and adding more than 3 repetitions can mark an arbitrarily high level of intensity. White space is used much less frequently. Spaces are used around noun phrases and predicates, and around certain grammatical particles. They're also often used to clarify syntax, placed between elements more syntactically distant. Some use white space much more often than others, and this is more common in formal contexts. This makes it tricky to determine what exactly a word is, but this can be done through analyzing syntax. Txtn is an isolating, topic-prominent language with a large number of possible word orders, though it leans SVO and head initial. It is pro-drop, zero copula, and makes heavy use of classifiers and various particles that indicate grammatical and pragmatic concepts. Nouns take optional plurals but don't mark case, possession, or definiteness. Verbs don't mark person, tense, or modality, but can mark aspect by reduplication, though this isn't that common. Verbs broadly fall into 2 categories: verbs that can only be used transitively, and verbs that are ambitransitive, where they can be used intransitively by discarding their patient argument. There are a small number of verbs as well that are strictly intransitive. Adjectives are an open class that can be used both attributively, where they tend to follow nouns, and as predicates. Possessive phrases are usually possessed possessor and are marked with an apostrophe. There are only 6 commonly used personal pronouns, and the third-person forms here are especially rare. Usually they're either implicit or classifiers will be used in their place. Around half the vocabulary comes from English, but other major languages such as Spanish, Hindi Urdu, Mandarin, Arabic, French, Swahili also contributed a lot of the lexicon. English tends to be more likely to loan in verbs, while other languages supply more nouns. Mandarin contributed comparatively little given how many speakers it has, but Mandarin had a very large effect on the grammar, especially the syntax. Many of these languages don't use the Latin alphabet, so words were taken from common romanizations, such as the Arabic chat alphabet or pinyin. A number of words also come from computer lingo, such as zip, to compress, shrink, or make concise, git, a file, save, or record, su, a clause initial imperative marker derived from the sudo command in bash. Given the language's origins, a good number of words also come from gamer lingo. Many words that already had standard abbreviations were loaned in as such, but other words had to go through some simplification to make a concise form, given that almost all root words are 3 characters or less. This is typically done by removing vowels and sometimes coded consonants from a word. For longer words, more concessions had to be made. In txtn, most words can be used as nouns, verbs, or adjectives, with meanings that aren't predictable. The adjective form will usually mean something that has a quality associated with the noun, and most often the noun form will be some tool or instrument used to perform the action of the verb. Verbs can also be derived into nouns through a derivational affix. The 3 most common are n for action nominals, r for agentives, and s for patientives, which refer to the object of a verb. These are really commonly used for word derivation. As an isolating language, most grammatical functions are expressed through particles. Many of these have pretty clear meanings, but a number of them have very unique functions. The hash symbol is pretty common, and its usage is somewhere between a proper noun marker and a vocative case. It's used to mark noun phrases with some kind of direct relevance to the current situation. It is almost always used for utterances that are just one noun phrase, and always used for proper nouns unless they are already very well known. It's very common with topicalized nouns. Note that for personal names, the @ symbol will be used instead. The @ symbol in other contexts is used as a co-reference back to the object of the sentence. It acts like a reflexive pronoun, but for the topic instead of the subject. Most particles are used for discourse functions, which are very often reduplicated. Many of these have been used since the 21st century, such as lol, which conveys both carefreeness and friendliness, and tc, expressing doubt of the speaker, and f, used to express sympathy at the listener's misfortune. Some newer particles are ist, which has a literal meaning of adherent or ideologue, often with a negative connotation. It's used to indicate the speaker thinks the listener is gullible or naive. The numeral 1, used clause finally, indicates the uniqueness of the situation or topic referred to in the predicate or the comment. RNG is used clause initially and conveys a sense that the situation described is due to factors outside of the speaker or listener's control. It has a similar meaning to the phrase c'est la vie used in archaic Terran French and English. The classifier system is similar in some ways to classifiers in languages like Mandarin, Bengali, or Neo-Venetian Koine, but in practice it acts more like a noun class system. There are about 20 distinct classifiers used in txtn, though many are very rare. Any noun can take any one of the classifiers. They usually indicate the shape of the object, but a few are used to indicate the speaker's attitude towards the noun. Some of the more common ones are the pipe character, which is used for lines or barriers, C for claw-shaped objects, O for circular or spherical objects, E for nouns referring to people or groups of people, S for long flexible objects, and W for liquids. There's also G, which is a generic classifier, derived from the pinyin for the generic classifier in Mandarin. Most of these have extended metaphorical meanings as well, since of course spatial concepts aren't that useful to residents of subspace or VR. Pipe character is used for difficulties, struggles, or problems. C is used for interfaces or controls. J is used for anything that pulls or attracts things together. O is used for something that's either isolated or unique. S is used for connections, paths, strategies, or tools. and W is used for abstract concepts or anything that isn't tangible. Classifiers also tend to be used for nouns when they are introduced into a conversation. After this, the noun can be referred to by the classifier alone. This is one of the strategies used to make the language very concise and efficient. The semantic content of classifiers also helps to disambiguate the language's many homophones. And now for the translation.